Hey, these things don't leak, do they?
Leak? Hell no. These things were made by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Welcome, zombie fans, to this week's episode of Reanimated. I am H.A. Conrad, here with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hello.
Hello. This is episode 51, and today we will be we will be returning to some horrible film. No, we will be reviewing Return of the Living Dead, which was in 1985. Brought back some interesting memories for me watching this, and we'll be talking about the latest in Dead-related events and all that fun stuff. But before we get started, we'd like to thank our friends over at Squarespace. As always, this episode is brought to you by Squarespace, and this is the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own website. We use this for the Reanimated site. It's awesome. And if you're a first-time user and you'd like to dive into the Squarespace world, you can get 10% off by using the code ZOMBIE, which is not case-sensitive. And, 10% off is pretty cool.
It ain't 8%.
True. It's awesome. So thanks again, Squarespace. And so, Stuart, how are things?
Well, Ms. Conrad, things are going pretty well. It's been a busy time, hence the delay, fair listeners. Apologies once again for a multi-week delay in kicking out the podcast. Sometimes the stars just don't align,
I thought you got kidnapped by zombies.
That is a plot twist that I have yet to see in a zombie film.
But in any case, there's been a few things going on in the world of the undead. We keep seeing these news articles for the Walking Dead spinoff, but what's been really fascinating about it is that every single one says, we don't know what the plot is or what it'll be about, but we know there's a spinoff, and it's blessed by Kirkland.
I mean, what's your gut reaction to the existence of a spinoff to Walking Dead?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think these are pretty well-placed marketing campaigns just to get some sort of buzz going. I don't know. I like what kind of a spinoff would it be? I'd want to know a little bit more about what it's supposed to be. I think we know that it's supposedly in the same universe, but I don't know. I don't know how you top Walking Dead, really.
This is a concern, definitely. And then I also just was trying to figure out, have there been any successful spin-off shows? Or this isn't even really a spin-off. They're calling it a companion show because they're going to be on at the same time. And so I was just like, okay, what are other spin-off shows? Well, Frasier, but that started the year that Cheers ended. But I think good examples are Deep Space Nine and Stargate Atlantis. Have you ever seen... I'm sure you've seen Deep Space Nine.
Of course I have.
But not Atlantis, I assume?
Some of it, but not really.
I was kind of a big Stargate fan there for a while. But, I mean, even those two... Well, Stargate Atlantis, I think, did 3 seasons while Stargate, the TV show, also was in existence. And It was pretty strong, kind of formulaic. Deep Space Nine, I think, only had 1 year of overlap. I don't know, these shows...
Well, Caprica was... mildly successful. It's a semi spin-off. I wouldn't necessarily call it a spin-off. It's more of a prequel, sort of.
Did it run at the same time as the original Battlestar Galactica?
No. It was after it finished.
They've got to be concerned with poaching their own audience, although they'll have it on different nights, certainly.
Well, that's the thing. The fact that it's so sparse in detail makes me wonder what their plans are for it. It's a little weird. Yeah. So we'll see.
In my heart of hearts, I'm excited to have more. If they can make another show of the quality and caliber of Walking Dead, then yeah, I want more of that. Sure. It's just when you look at the history, or at least a very quickly Wikipedia version of the history of television, there aren't many examples of this working, and so I'm curious why they are so keen to move forward with it.
The jury is out until they give us more. It could be interesting, but I'm not, to me, it seems even more interesting that they just keep basically putting out the same articles, which is very similar to the one that we're going to throw in the show notes. We've seen at least 3 or 4 that say almost exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And they keep being released every month or so. And it's sort of okay, well, you have to at some point give more detail to get me excited about it. In any case, so the Christmas season soon will be upon us, Stuart, and I think that I'm totally going to have to get you one of these awesome ugly sweaters.
I can get behind that. I'm definitely, it's turning into sweater weather over here.
Yep.
It's less than 70 degrees out, so.
So this is up on Boing Boing, and you start to see this kind of thing, but some of these designs are pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Right.
I think Sasquatch is probably my personal favorite, but Satan Santa was also very, or sorry, Zombie Santa was also very good.
The Sasquatch one is like pretty cool.
It's so understated.
It's so understated, and I could see people like looking at it and being like, "What exactly is that supposed to be?" I kind of like that one.
I feel like
Um,
Satan Santa, where he's like got the child in the basket, is kind of beating it over your head
yeah,
a little bit.
that's a little disturbing,
If they could
but
make that blend into the background a little more, so people would be like looking at your sweater and then being like, "Oh my God, that's horrifying." But
that's so
instead,
disturbing.
it's like
It's a little
right
too
there.
much.
Yeah.
But if that's not your thing and you'd rather have a zombie hand chia pet, we can make that happen too, which is the other thing that's been popping up in the news items lately.
What are chia pets actually good for?
No, you mean the actual?
It's like having a chia, whatever, anything. Is it just like a splash of color? You can't eat that stuff, can you?
Yeah, you can. You can definitely eat chia. Have you ever
These are
had stuff with chia seeds? Maybe this is just because I
right.
live in Park Slope, but
This is the chia and of which makes chia seeds, which people put in all kinds of beverages. It looks disgusting. Has the
yeah,
consistency of
no,
mucus, that kind of stuff.
yeah, that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
But apparently it's a powerful energy booster. But kale I think overshadows the value of the chia seed
Well,
here.
give me
But
a zombie kale plant, and then talk to me in a couple weeks.
yeah, zombie kale would be a smarter idea, more functional. It's a superfood. And speaking of diets, did you I found this it's a parody article about losing weight.
Video was fantastic,
It
really
was
well.
really good, really good. This popped up on CNET in early September, and it's pretty awesome.
She really
I think
does have great abs.
she does have great abs. That was good. And it was just they were talking about the rapid weight loss system. Um, it's a pretty fun little parody video, so I think people should check that out.
Yeah, and well acted by the zombie lady.
Yes, yes, indeed.
I liked her run. Her run was always bizarre.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, so that was good. And then we've got an article about, well, a book actually, a novel that's come out written by a professor of mathematics.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's trying really hard to make this interesting, but I just would be a complete and utter failure at this particular um, thing, which is calculus.
Yeah.
It's like fun with calculus in a zombie way, And it's like, yeah, no matter how many zombies you throw at this problem, I will still not be able to do this.
He mentions in the jacket blurb or whatever, like, I can't teach you all of calculus. We're assuming you know a little bit of calculus. And for myself, I'm basically like, well, the window of time when I knew the amount of calculus necessary to read and understand this book was probably like 6 months, and that happened a while back. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like, before my brain decided that I was never going to use that information, it just kind of kicked it out again.
Hats off to him for trying, but man, I saw the word calculus and I got kind of like a little bit of like stress. I know other people don't feel that way.
I think current calculus students,
Some people really like it. I have friends that loved calculus. I just was not one of them.
and they're still practicing.
Um, Not necessarily, but I guess maybe a couple of them might be related to their work. Um, but if that's not your thing, there is a new zombie horror comedy out featuring Jason Mewes, who you know from Kevin Smith films. He plays Jay in those films. And apparently there is a film coming out called Devil's Tower. And it looks, you know, like it features Jason Mewes.
Yeah, I didn't really quite understand what he was doing in this English film.
I don't know. I think maybe he's just trying to do other films that don't involve Kevin Smith. Maybe I
I
don't
was
know.
waiting for him to bust out some kind of like Cockney, but no, I don't think he has that kind of
I
dynamic
don't think
range.
I don't think he has that range. No. So, but it could be all right. I think he's entertaining generally, so that could be cool. Um, and I do have some sad news for you, Stuart. Remember that record that they were trying to break with the longest unbroken line of zombies on water?
The tubing one.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Apparently, they sadly fell short, but the video is entertaining.
that's a disaster.
More so because of the anchor women doing the report look really annoyed to be doing the report.
Because they didn't even break the record.
Yeah, and they were like, "Ugh, why are you making us report on this?" It's totally clear that
Why did I
they're
have to come down
annoyed.
to the river?
I know.
The weirdest and kind of most bizarre part of the story is that it wasn't even like they were trying to break a record for most zombie tubers. It was most tubers,
But
but
they
they just
decided to
had them
dress up.
dress up as zombies anyway. So they did make a record. I have
Yeah,
no doubt that this was the longest zombie tubing line ever.
right, right. But in any case, yeah, I guess maybe they can leave that one alone till next year. My thought is that maybe they had the people dress up as zombies in order to attract more people,
Yeah,
perhaps, but I don't know.
get the comic book
Um,
crowd involved.
yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, that's it for the news items, unless you have something else to add.
A varied selection there.
Yeah, pretty varied one.
Seems like zombie culture is marching right along, or shambling, rather.
It is actually, and there's been a bunch of different zombie walks and stuff. And my friend Alan Baleward actually did a bunch of photos at the Vancouver Zombie Walk. I think it was a couple weeks ago. And I have to tell you, some of the makeup that was done during the zombie walk is ridiculously impressive. Like screen ready looking makeup. So people are, still pretty into doing this kind of thing.
Hmm.
I didn't see all the makeup with the tubing people, you know, but I would imagine some people got really into it.
Finding the good waterproof zombie makeup challenging, no doubt.
Yeah. And I'll throw some of those photos in the show notes. There's like a couple that were like, wow, that's kind of, it must have taken like hours to do, you know? Um, but uh, on to our review of the week. You sound totally thrilled to be talking about this particular film.
This was a disaster of a film.
So
This,
you had never seen it, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. Well, I can understand why this would be a disaster, but what we are talking about is the film The Return of the Living Dead. And this was directed by Dan O'Bannon. Most people know him in terms of his level of fame for writing the screenplay for Alien. This he was also involved in Night of the Living Dead, or he was involved some tangentially in some of the storylines, and basically he and Romero parted ways.
I think you're
Um,
confusing Dan O'Bannon with Russo, who
oh, sorry,
was.
Russo. Sorry, but Dan O'Bannon was some. He was like the third person involved in this, but Russo was somewhat involved with the original Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, they were basically like partners, I assume. Well, I assume that they were partners with Romero and Russo since they both went their separate ways afterwards and made their own version of canon.
Right. It's a Return of the Living Dead. Sorry. But there was like several writers involved, and I think some of the folks, including Russo, were a little uncomfortable because they felt like they didn't want to step on Romero's toes. This was sort of their compromise, I suppose. So they both had different ideas about what they wanted to do with the series. And this film, or the idea of this film, was based upon a novel that Russo wrote. So, you know, but I remember watching this. I remember watching this, sneakily watching this at a friend's house because we did not have cable at my house. And seeing that it was in '85, I was a bit young to be watching this.
Yeah.
I do remember being like, oh, that's like super weird about a couple of the scenes that I'll talk about in a moment. But I also remember people talking about there's a specific scene that was talked about on the playground, so to speak, in this film, and not the one that I think you would initially think.
I can't
Um,
wait to find out what you guys were talking about on the playground in
yeah, yeah,
1985.
yeah. And it was like this thing, and but in any case, the budget for this was 4 million, and it was actually fairly successful at the box office because it made over 14 million.
Yeah, and Rotten
Um,
Tomatoes still has it at like a decent review. 90% on the tomatometer,
yep.
79% with the audience. So somehow the critics think it's way better than the than the fans, which isn't, I think, always the way that works out.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. But and they had a lot of they had some interesting people in terms of the cast on here. But
I only recognized one of the cast, and that
who
was
do,
James Karen, who plays Frank.
right.
He's been kind of like a backgroundish kind of character in a lot of stuff, up to and including. Well, he was in Superman Returns, Mulholland Drive, Congo, and the 1995 version of Nixon. But he has a really long catalog of films that he's done, and he has a recognizable face.
Don Calfa is and he plays Ernie in this.
The
Um,
Mortician, yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's been in a ton of stuff, and I recognize him. Just like he's a character actor that's been in like like a ton of like one-off like cameo or guest as a guest star in different
Hmm.
things. Mainly in like the 90s, I think. So, and I recognized him from like he was like in Twin Peaks and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I think he's there, but he definitely wasn't as just one of those people that's always kind of like into everything.
Hmm.
I think this was one of the only like real films that he was in, but that you and I would have seen anyway. And then a couple of the other folks in this didn't really go on to do all that much. Just
Yeah, like I said, I didn't only recognize. I mean, I thought that Don Calfa did a sweet job as Ernie. He
oh
was one
yeah,
of
he
the
was
one of
great.
the most memorable characters in the film, but don't can't say that I recognize anybody else.
This is like just even watching it's so very dated. It's so very 80s. You have the sort of stereotypes like the punk kids running around looking to party.
I agree that these kids are very 80s, but don't they also seem like a weird mixed bag? Like you've got punks, some kind of even like proto-anarchist teenager. You've got some kind of preppy kid who
Oh
also
yeah,
has the boombox.
absolutely.
And then you've got
This
is it Gina? Is that her name? Tina.
Tina.
Freddie's girlfriend, who's like a preppy again, or something else, like some kind of little innocent. I don't. They were such a weird collection. It like doesn't
Well,
make any sense.
I think it was supposed to be that way in some ways, but
Well, maybe it was, but
to cut
why?
because well, I mean, especially if you look at some of the films that were coming out then, like, just in terms of stereotypes, that this was the kind of sort of group of people that you would see represented in a lot of films. And I think because they were going for sort of a comedy type thing, I think that they were playing that up a bit.
I guess
But
it's to me it was disconcerting to have all these people together who should have been I don't know who should have been at each other's throats, and they were mostly just screaming and yelling at each other the whole time.
yeah,
Like their normal conversation was basically just yelling.
yelling. And I think that that is in some ways what there just in terms of like an 80s formula, there was a lot of like the usual that you would see in these kinds of films, just like teens running around with huge boom boxes.
Going to the
And
cemetery to hang out
yep, we go
for
to the
two
cemetery.
hours. Like you've got two
Hmm.
hours to kill. Where should we
Uh,
go? Let's
the
go to the
cemetery.
cemetery.
Yeah. And so and they're drinking and well, and the scene that this actually okay, so and then there's just gratuitous boobs and strip teases, which make no sense.
That one
Um,
chick is naked for probably, I don't know, eighty
Most of the
percent of the
film.
time. Yeah.
It's one of those films. But let's talk a little bit about this. I mean, one of the things that they do with this film and the setup, so they directly reference Night of the Living Dead in this, as part of their storyline, which is really interesting. So they're basically, referencing it, basically saying we know what we're doing here. We're totally kind of riffing on this, which is an interesting way to go.
Yeah.
Because there was sort of the not controversy, but obviously there was some sore feelings there, and this was the compromise. But they totally reference it within the film and the story of the Night of the Living Dead in the film as part of the setup for the plot, which is that you've got this guy who's taking a job at a mortuary, basically, and
At the medical supply company.
right. But there's dead bodies and whatever, and so it's kind of this weird thing where he's being shown around by, what would you call him, the proprietor or the manager?
He's the manager because Bert is the owner.
Right. The guy is like, basically showing him around and showing him all the creepy things that he's gotten used to, and the kind of like, I don't want to say getting off, but he's enjoying showing him all the disgusting things in the building.
Well, nobody in this film can do anything in like a normal tone, so it's
No.
always like even if he's just mildly interested in the dog split in half,
Right.
because of the crazy scenery eating acting going on in every scene of this film, it's like he loves this dog cut in half so freaking much
I
that
think it's great.
it's so over the top. Like every scene is overacted, and I guess that's part of the appeal, but to me it was super annoying. But yeah, so it comes across like, oh, and look at this model of a skeleton, it's the best thing ever.
Right. And this is Frank, by the way,
Yeah.
the main foreman guy. And as they're going around the building, and they show up the military drums that are supposedly, they're there, and nobody else knows that they're there. Apparently, they're these like missing things, and there's toxic gas, and this is what causes all the problems because the gas reanimates corpses everywhere.
And these drums contain bodies that were basically from Night of the Living Dead, right? Like
Right. Or
these are
that's
supposedly zombies that were attacking the farmhouse.
Right. That's the implication. So in any case, that's sort of the setup, is that's why all of this happens. They bring in different pieces of, the outside population, which is kind of an interesting treatment, but the main pieces is the gain of teenagers, and then the adults that are involved in this, which are all somehow related to the medical supply company. And then the like fully outside everything is the Colonel Glover, who has been trying to track down these missing barrels for a while, it sounds like.
Here's another character that had me scratching my head. Like,
yeah, it's super weird.
They're painting this Colonel as like a billionaire because he
Right.
lives
I
in
know.
this compound, and they're like fancy rich people. It's just such a weird portrayal of the military, which
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand, but okay. Yeah, and then he's like just a total dick to his wife, who's making him lamb chops. He's like,
But he
had it
already
for
had that
lunch.
for lunch. But so there's a lot of stuff within this that are not, they don't follow all the rules. They've changed the canon a bit. The zombies in this film
Oh,
don't.
this is barely a zombie movie.
No, the zombies in this film cannot be killed by, like, and there's like this super weird scene with the yellow zombie, which is one of the first like active zombies that they encounter, and it can't be like, there's this whole scene where they like basically scythe it through the head and it's still alive. And then there's also a lot of weird zombies like the tar zombie,
Which
which
I
is
think we're supposed to believe came out of one of the barrels, maybe?
right. And that's like a pretty famous one. And that's, it's interesting because this is the film where the whole brains thing came from.
As far as vocalizing it, yeah.
Yep. And these zombies want brains, and they totally hit you over the head with the fact that they want brains.
And
And
apparently they want brains, as becomes clear later on in the film. They want the brains because it makes it less painful to be dead.
right.
It's
Very,
just,
it's
come
so
on.
weird. But okay, so I will tell you, like, watching this and just watching how it unfolds, it clearly had been so many years since I saw this, but I do remember like talking about like how awesome this movie was, like, on the playground. So I have to say I was pretty young to be watching this.
Hmm.
The strip scene and the boob scene, I didn't even really remember those. But what I did remember, and what was the big scene that everybody was talking about, is there's a female zombie with who's kind of like a torso with just the spinal cord
Hmm.
kind of hanging out, and she's the one that they are basically questioning. And her spinal cord is like flipping all over the place, and she's like, yes, and she's the one who tells them why they want the brains. Like, so they basically do a lot of weird explaining in this film. But
And
that
because
was
the zombies do a lot of the the talking, right?
right.
They're
It's
always
kind of
getting on the
weird.
radio,
Yeah, they
which
are getting on
was
the radio.
it was kind of a funny
Well, so it's
twist to the
supposed to be like we're not really taking this very seriously kind of thing, I suppose.
whole movie. Yeah.
But the zombie with the weird spinal cord thing, that was the thing that everybody was always like, "Oh, that was so creepy and weird." And looking at it now, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, why did we think that was so cool?" You know what I mean? Like, it just, yeah, very, very, very different watching this now. I actually found this movie completely hilarious. You were apparently not as impressed as I was. Well, or you didn't find it as amusing.
Maybe I just don't have that sentimental connection to it that you do. So watching it fresh, you know, yeah, 20 years later. No, 30? Wait, how many years ago? 30 years later, right?
Yeah,
Not
not holding up too much.
no, definitely not. And not after we've been watching like good stuff. Even though The Crazies was one of the last things we watched. This was no good.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I think some of what it's very splatstick, so to speak. Like that's sort of the genre that they were looking for. They were mixing the horror with the comedy, so it was kind of silly and very like stereotypical. It's not meant to be taken seriously at all, but it is super cheesy. The effects are terrible. I did, and rewatching it, I will say the weird nudity throughout it was so gratuitous and strange. But this is something you would see in a lot of 80s movies, just like these weird kind of scenes that don't make any sense, but they threw them in there just to have some breasts on the scene.
Yeah, I fully
And
expected to
one
see
of
boobs at some point, but the fact
yeah,
that she was naked for so much of the film
oh, I
was
know, and then
like that became it like crossed over from just like
it's
the
really
brief glimpse
strange.
of boobies in a normal 80s movie to like, wait, she's actually just going to be naked the rest of the film,
Well,
and it made
one
it
of
actually easier to concentrate on the movie in a way.
one of the one of the movies I kept thinking about was Trading Places when there's like also a strange gratuitous strip scene and a
With
lot of
Jamie Lee
boobs.
Curtis.
No, there's like this scene when they go to like when Eddie Murphy's character has all of his old friends over
That's right. That
and
has the
and
party. Yeah.
yeah, he has a party and at some point some of the women decide to like take off their tops.
Yep. That
Just
happens.
for no apparent reason. Just kind of like, oh, you know, they're like this is what's going to happen now because this
AJ,
is
it
what
was a
you do.
party. Come on.
Yeah. Anyway,
I know you have
uh,
these kinds of parties in Brooklyn all the time. Just
yeah, I try to keep that on the down low. Yeah, so this was something that would happen quite a bit, but it is a little bit jarring and weird to think about when you look at these films now. And Romero didn't really do this, so that's an interesting division there.
well, I mean, it was
Other than his Naked Zombie and
right.
in Night of the Living
And
Dead,
that was controversial, and that was just a butt shot.
there is nothing sexy about that. And this is basically zombie stripper.
Well, she starts off as a normal human stripper.
But ends up there. So it's all good. And it's interesting how, like, considering watching this film, it's so fascinating that it still has legs. Like, it's still referenced in a ton of things, which is weird. There's, like, I guess there was a South Park episode. It was mentioned in, like, The Simpsons and a few other things. So people obviously watched this, as did I. I have not watched the documentary that was released in 2011. So I don't know if I will actually get to that, but there were some tidbits that I picked up from that, which was just about actually specifically about the striptease woman's trials and tribulations during this film.
I mean, she was
Did you see?
barefoot a lot, running through
She,
from set to set.
she was barefoot, but she was also, apparently her striptease. She was supposed to be full on naked.
She was wearing some
Um,
sort of weird pouch over her lower
Well,
bits.
but that wasn't originally what was supposed to happen. Apparently, she was just full on not supposed to look like that. And then
Hmm.
I guess um, when some of the producers saw this, they were like, no. And so they made her have this like prosthetic something put over her, which is what ended up happening, which is also kind of creepy. And she had a lot of problems with this because it was like she had to be basically taken in and out of this in order to use the bathroom. So that's got to be fun. I have a feeling she must have been like, why did I agree to do this zombie film, you know? So there was that stuff, and there was a couple of other things like the members only jacket that Freddie was wearing.
He had like a whole leisure suit made out of that material.
Yeah, but it
Sorry,
was
not Freddie. I'm thinking of Ernie.
somebody else. I thought it was Freddie's jacket. Or no, it wasn't Freddie. It was
Freddie was wearing a leather jacket.
Freddie was wearing a leather sort of team jacket, and it said
leather, like varsity.
Yeah, like a leather jacket. Sorry, Bert was wearing the members only jacket.
Yeah.
But Freddie's jacket had like profanity written on the back, and I guess they had to switch out the jacket or switch out the lettering for the TV movie or something.
Huh. I missed that. There were a lot of in the background, like prop wise, things that you could read more into. Like in Frank's office, there was an eye chart that
that said
spelled
terrible
out.
things.
Well, it just said Bert is a slave driver, so it was actually in character. Like it was just, but like reading an eye chart is difficult. And so you're like they're having a conversation. There are zombies like outside the door, and I'm there like, oh, what does that eye chart say? And then I start reading through it. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff hidden around in the film for inquiring minds.
And there was also just in terms of what happened with the film, there was a lot of music, I guess, that was recut or was not allowed, like it from the theatrical release to the like DVD release. They had to switch over some music due to the copyright issues. So there's, and people have a lot of love for this film. They really do. And even while I was watching it, though I found some of it hilarious, part of me was like wondering why some of this was so popular. Maybe it was part of the zeitgeist of the time.
It was like, really cool to watch Rocky Horror Picture Show, and they were just trying to make another one of those sorts of cult films. Like maybe that was what they went out for.
Maybe. And I think maybe some of it also is that I was definitely kind of young to be watching this, but I could totally imagine like teenage boys being absolutely into seeing this film.
Well, that seems to be who this is for, right? You've got the gang of teenagers, you've got the strip stuff. It's basically a movie made for like probably 14 to 19-year-old boys.
Right. Like it was fun watching it again. I don't need to watch it again though.
Funniest moment in the film for me was very close to the end when Colonel Glover calls the mobile artillery unit.
Uh-huh.
The guy answers the radio call, or the phone really. His terminology is just amazing. He's like, yes sir, pass your code words: Archimedes, hot dog, rhubarb, Roger.
I know it was like wait, wasn't Leslie Nielsen supposed to be in this? I think they did try to cast him, and that's what I was thinking about when I saw that, because it felt very like smoking. Yeah. It felt very like Airplane or any of those films, like that slapstick kind of dialogue. I mean, I think that it's an interesting thing to watch in terms of like placing it in a time period. Is it my favorite zombie film? No, but it was entertaining in any case. I'm glad that you agreed to watch it.
Yeah, it's got to do it to get to have a real solid understanding of like where this genre has come from, the directions it maybe tried to go, and gladly didn't quite go in that direction.
Right.
Although there still is this B zombie phenomenon. Like these are movies that still get made with the humor and with the sex. Like these are still like zombie strippers and these kinds of things. This is definitely like probably the granddaddy of what where all those movies have come from.
Right. And I mean even this series has had other, there's been tons of sequels. Like there's a part 2 of this, and then it goes on to
there's up to 4 of them.
5, I think. Because there's also Rave to the Grave. So I think that obviously it has legs. Obviously people like it. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but still kind of fun. Um, so yeah, I'm not gonna give it a thumbs up, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah. In terms of also just the like the storyline like flow construction, it ends very abruptly.
Hmm.
But I was glad. Like I was glad it was over, even though I thought like just from watching it, like oh my god, this probably could still go on for a while. I was so grateful when they just blew everything up.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert.
yeah. I don't think people will be all that bothered.
Yeah.
So,
But anyway, I don't know. Like, do you have anything else you want to talk about with this film?
not really. I mean, I think it was an interesting thing to do, but I don't necessarily need to do it again. Interestingly enough, it was really hard to find this anywhere. Um, in terms of streaming.
Yeah. It's
Which
so
is
culty that it's kind of
yeah,
off the
like I
radar.
mean, and a lot of it, I mean, it's come out. There's been like multiple different DVD releases. Some with the glow in the dark cover, which I vaguely remember, but it was interesting trying to find this. I didn't expect that to be as hard to find it, but yeah. But this was a nice little like walk down memory lane. But I'm willing to, not willing, I would like to talk about newer stuff next time. So, I have not yet, but I am due to watch the first couple of episodes of Z Nation, and I don't think you've watched that either.
I haven't. It's kind of snuck up on me. I mean, I know we've talked about it coming, but then this is
You
kind of
know,
a
for
it's a
some,
busy time for TV.
it is. For some reason, I thought it was coming out in October, and maybe that's just because I was coupling it in my head with Walking Dead. But it's out, so I think we should watch a couple episodes and give our initial thoughts, and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah. Yeah, good deal. We can either endorse it heartily or be like,
Or or the jury's out, right?
or I think the jury will. I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna be like on the fence about this show. I think I'm gonna either love it or hate it.
Yeah, me too. Um, I kind of have a sneaking suspicion where you're going to end up with it.
Well, let's wait. The jury for now is still out, but
Uh-huh. You've made a few comments there that
by
leads me to
Saturday.
believe.
Well,
All right.
I just think Zombabies is such a bold opening move that if they are in the pilot, maybe they hold them out until the 12th episode or something, and we'll see. But
Yeah.
yeah, Zombabies should be used very sparingly. They're like a spice that is overpowering to the rest of the dish.
I also feel like zombie should be like sneaking up on people. They just shouldn't like throw them out there for general consumption. You know what I mean?
You want to eat a wait? Why do you want to eat Zombabies?
No, I mean when you're throwing it into a trailer, that should just be something that's left to surprise the audience. I don't know that you should be leading with
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think we might be witnessing some Sharknado. The you know.
Well, it is on Sifi, so I still am annoyed at them changing the
And
spelling.
will forever be.
Yes, I will always be annoyed by that. So Sifi, we're gonna watch you. Get ready.
Yeah,
Um,
looking forward to it.
yeah, absolutely. So until next time, peace out.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening, and give us the old review on iTunes if you get a chance. See you next week.